All right, everyone, welcome back to another episode of the podcast. My name is Daniel Trinham. I will be your host for this episode as always. And today I have an exciting conversation with someone that I'm really looking forward to chatting with today. I have had the pleasure of briefly chatting with them before this and learning a little bit about what they do, just the work that they do. And the way that I initially came across them was actually kind of indirectly through social media. I came across some of their work and was one, really impressed by it, but two, was just really also impressed with just their authenticity that they had, the way they presented themselves. And so I decided I want to have a conversation with them. And so it is my pleasure to have Mr. AJ Wiley on the podcast today. So AJ, thank you for joining me.
Yeah, thank you, Daniel. I'm excited to chat. So let's do it.
For sure, man. So first and foremost, so I know that you do a lot of different graphic design. You have your own. Is it an apparel company, or is it more like graphic design and apparel, or what's the kind of details on the work that you do?
Yeah, it's funny because I guess other people will find me through different avenues, and so I guess all of those answers would technically be correct. I definitely like to do a variety of things, and so one of those is my apparel brand, Kumawave, which is kind of my way of producing my own work and getting it out there, and just getting people to support me in that way as an artist. But then I also do freelance design work, which is majority of my income. So yeah, self-employed in a few different ways. And then on top of that, doing a lot of social media content, which is like what you said, how you found me. So yeah, just those three would be my, I guess, pillars as to how I function.
Yeah, well, like you mentioned, so I came across with you on LinkedIn, and I've mentioned just LinkedIn on the show before, and social media as a whole is depending on which site you're on, each site has its own flavor, and it's all different. But LinkedIn specifically, I don't think this is just my experience, but a lot of times I feel that you can go on there and you can kind of like, you can look around at the things that are being posted, and sometimes it feels like I feel like I'm the one like not in on it or something like that. Like I'll see people like posting stuff, and I'm just like, is this actually you? Like, do you actually do these things? Or it's an interesting interaction you have with the people on LinkedIn. And so I don't know, I guess somebody that I follow must have liked one of your posts, but I saw some of the work you were doing, specifically regarding like the animations and the designs you were doing for the states, and like the different state designs that you had made. And of course, I currently live in Tennessee, and so I was like, oh, well, I want to see if he does Tennessee. I was wanting to see if you did that one at that point, and I just became really interested because the way that you presented yourself was very much just like, hey, this is me, this is my work. You can take it or leave it, and I hope you enjoy it. And I think that kind of element of authenticity is something that I routinely try to present as, in my own life as best I can, whether it's on LinkedIn or Instagram or whatever social media site. But I think it's something that is far too often not displayed enough. And so I wanted to ask you about that. I know we kind of briefly talked about it on when we initially chatted, but I want to talk to you about that, just what your thoughts are on just social media, the way that we portray ourselves, and the way that you try to hopefully portray yourself in a true and authentic way, and how that eventually feeds back into the work that you do and the business that you have.
Yeah. It's a loaded question. So I guess I'll talk about my interpretation of how social media has changed and what I've seen, and then what I feel makes the most sense. And so I've been posting on social media for maybe 8 years now. And so I remember, when I first started college, I started posting a lot, and just like doing a drawing every day, posting on Instagram. That was when there was no reels or anything. It was just posting graphics of my work. And it honestly felt like a very slow burn. It was like, okay, I'm averaging, let's say 100 likes a post. But I remember just loving, okay, it's like, okay, what am I going to make tomorrow? And like, is tomorrow going to be the one that I just, absolutely love? And, honestly, how I feel social media has functioned is that a lot of that's been lost. Where, so I actually got a TikTok in 2020. So that was right when everyone was downloading it.
Yeah.
And I would equate a lot of my success to TikTok and their algorithm before everyone got one. And so I thought that that was really exciting and fun. And so I started posting a ton on TikTok. And then it obviously got congested. And then Instagram obviously started to push the same thing with Reels.
Yeah.
And I caught some early success with Reels too. And LinkedIn now is kind of where I post because that's where a lot of the organic reach functions the best. And we can kind of go into the nuances of each one if you'd like, but my interpretation of it is that TikTok really pushed people to go viral because that was the goal. Instagram, like maybe like when it first started, maybe, but it really excited anyone. You know, you could post something really stupid and funny and go viral, or you could actually be a professional. And, you know, something like what I'm doing is promoting my career and my body of work. And so I think what that did was it made people, one, follow trends. And so it wasn't even their content. It was, okay, I'm just going to redo what this other person did. And I'm, I guess, talking more as far as like a dance or like a joke, you know, you see, and that's the definition of a trend.
Mm-hmm.
Everyone's going to do the same thing and do it over and over and over again.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that manifests differently in each platform.
Mm-hmm.
With TikTok, I see it as like, honestly, you could, you know, do the same video verbatim and then it does well.
Oh, people
and
do
so,
it. People will make the same video, you know, verbatim
absolutely.
of somebody else. Yeah.
Yeah. And I see that. I'm like, okay, like seriously, like I get a little annoyed by it, mostly because I'm creative and I want to see new, you know, content. And for myself, I want to produce new content. And I think in the same way, it's so easy to like say get on LinkedIn and see, okay, it's supposed to be very uptight or tight and professional. And, you know, I'm always supposed to start off with, I'm grateful and excited for and whatever opportunity you have.
Yeah.
But I think the lesson I learned through posting for so long is that people, I guess I'll preface with saying this as well. It's very easy to sniff out when someone wants to post to get viral. So like, it feels very selfish. It's like, okay, they want the attention, they want this. And I think the flip that switch for me was, I'm creating this work because I like it, but I need to have that ingredient of I'm doing it so they enjoy it.
Yeah.
And the moment I created like illustrations and designs to collaborate with the people that are following me, it got a lot more exciting because it wasn't just like, hey, you know, please like this, please blow me up so I can make money and I can do this. It's, hey, I want to do this series. What do you guys think?
Yeah.
Like what state do you want me to do next for that series? And all sorts of things. And that just felt more authentic to me, and to engage on like a mutual basis, I feel like was very fun for both sides. And so I think that's something that people kind of forget and need to use it because it takes work. It takes work to humbly ask input and opinions, and like on top of that, getting feedback is very important. And so I think, you know, okay, maybe you get a viral video and you can feel good about it for a couple of weeks because you copied someone else's, or you can feel like you have actual purpose and you're creating your own content that you enjoy, and allowing people in on that.
Yeah. And, you know, something I want to talk about, you briefly touched on it, was the idea of, I mean, different people use social media for different reasons. Like, we're kind of explicitly talking about people that are trying to accomplish some kind of goal and not just kind of browsing it for the sake of browsing it. But you know, this show like that we're doing right now has really been my first like attempt at making something that I hope, like, I enjoy doing it, but I also am hoping other people consume it. Because prior to this, I really only use social media just to like document things in my life and just say things that I thought were funny and just kind of like what most people use it for, you know? But now that I have a little bit of skin in the game, in the sense where like I'm now participating in this weird internet game that we all kind of play, trying to compete for attention and time. I know exactly what you mean. Like you'll see people, or at least I do, like I see things posted, whether it's on any kind of social media platform, and I'm not going to dig too deep into the psyche of the person posting it, but like you said, you can kind of sniff out and see when it seems like someone is posting someone purely because they believe it will get the attention that it has been getting, rather than they're posting something because they genuinely believe in the product they're talking about. They've created something that they're proud of, whatever it is. And I think we're seeing that play out because the current state of like internet content creation, I guess that's a very, very broad field, but I mean, the internet's only been a thing for like 2 decades or so, like, a little over that time. And so the rules are still being written, but at the same time, there's still not a perfect guide to it. And so, you'll see, like, I grew up, the generation that grew up watching like Vines and stuff. Like, you'll see people that blew up in that time, and the people that, in my opinion, were the most authentic to themselves and were trying to actually create a product that they were proud of, are the ones that seem to be having the most long-lasting and sustainable career. However, you see other individuals that are just kind of hopping on and off trends and trying to just purely get the eyes on them. And from what I have seen and have heard, those either seem to be the people that enjoy it the least or are having the least sustainable careers. And to me, that's encouraging because, like I said, to kind of go back to what I was talking about at the beginning, is that when you now that I am in, again, playing in this game of content creation that we all play in, there are days where I'm just like, man, I will see someone and I'll see them post something and I'm like, I know that I can make something better than that. Or I know that like what I've done, I think it's at least got to be as good as that. And yet they're the one that's getting all the attention. But to me, I think that focusing more on creating something because you enjoy creating it, or like you said, creating it because someone else will enjoy it. Knowing the reason why you're creating something or why you're doing what you're doing, especially on social media, helps make it a lot more easier to go through. Because heck, dude, if I was just making this show just to, like, I don't know, be on Joe Rogan someday or something like that, like I would go insane, because that's not enough motivation for me to do it once you get to episode 30 or whatever. It's not, that's not enough of a fuel for the fire to keep doing it. But my desire to have fun with it and create a show that people actually enjoy and people tell me they enjoy it, that's a much more a much stronger fuel to my personal fire. And I think that's something that you have to have in whatever way you want to quantify it. You have to have that if you're wanting to make any kind of long lasting and sustainable impact on the internet or any kind of social media site in particular,
Yeah. And, I think especially when having this conversation, it's very important to, if you're listening to this, it's like, okay, how does this apply to me? And kind of like what you said, some people are just consumers, and that's totally okay. And so you go there wanting to be in whatever it is, be inspired, be entertained, laugh, all these things. And there's a big blessing in the fact that everyone now has an opportunity with just their phone to make a living. And that wasn't possible, I would even say like 15 years ago, because
No, not really.
Just the way the like society functions now with how valuable social media is, it's very special. But I think there's something to be careful about as well. As you have the world at your fingertips with your phone, that can be very stressful and anxiety inducing if you don't have a healthy relationship with it.
Yeah.
And so, it definitely exposes you in a way where it's like, okay, I want to be famous. I'm going to copy these trends and I'm going to do everything it takes. And I just talk to people, who also make a living doing it all the time. And everyone's experienced burnout in some way, which I think is somewhat necessary.
Yeah.
Like you need to go through these things to understand how you're wired and how you function. So then you can have a better relationship with it. And I would say, I've had moments where I was like, oh my gosh, I need to post today. I need to do all these things.
Mm-hmm.
And normally we just like to demonize social media in general and just say, oh, it's terrible, whatever the complaint is. But I think it's very important to look inward and say, okay, how much time on social media is healthy for me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I have seasons where I'm not consuming anything. I'm just producing something, I'll post it, and then I just won't look at it.
Yeah.
And there are also other times where I'm really excited and I'm interacting with people and doing these things. When it feels like there's this like infinite vortex of like, I have to be on it all the time. I have to post 5 times a day. And right, it's this grind culture that
Mm-hmm.
if you're not careful on TikTok, you get in that algorithm and everyone's like, go dark for 6 months and post a billion videos and all these things.
Yeah.
And so I tail it back to the fact of, okay, what do you actually want?
Mm-hmm.
Because I can say from experience, having a viral video is great for maybe a week.
Yeah.
And I think my values have changed a lot since experiencing what it means to actually like make a living off this and get the attention, right? Everyone wants the attention.
Yeah.
But I also know a lot of people that have a very unhealthy relationship with attention, and that discussion is very important, because I could give all of the formulas as to how to have a successful page and all these things, but if it's going to burn you to the ground and you're going to be regretful that you even started it,
Mm-hmm.
then it's important to talk about that.
Yeah, and I would 100% agree. I think that all those things you just talked about are things that like have been rolling through my head ever since I started this, but in a good way, because like I said, this has been my first kind of attempt in a field like this, and something that I have definitely I've come to learn is that whether it is whatever kind of venture it is, whether it's a podcast or whether it's something like you do with graphic design, or whether you're just trying to make videos or like whatever kind of service or product you're making online as something for people to consume, first you have to know why you're doing it. And I think if the reason why you are doing it is to become quote unquote famous or to go viral or to have the most eyes on you, yes, that's perfect. Like that is a very possible thing that you can do. It can happen. But I think that is the quickest way to hate what you're doing and to never want to do it again and to be sick and tired of doing that thing. Because like you said, when you actually get the thing that you want, and this is not to make me sound like I'm some huge like media, person or anything, like I'm a very small podcast, but when you kind of get the thing that you want, it becomes normal for you. I know of things in my life, not even necessarily related to the show, that at a time in my life, I would have thought, man, like it would be so cool to have that thing, or it'd be so like, something I've talked to people about is like, I'm currently living in my own apartment. And I remember there were times in my life where I had roommates or I was living at my parents' house and I was like, man, I just wish I had my own place. And now like I've had my own place for a while. I have full autonomy to do the things that I want to do. And it's just normal for me now. And, that's a thing that I think a lot of people can relate to, because not everybody goes viral or wants to go viral on on a social media platform, but especially for the people kind of like you and me that are doing things and interacting with people outside of our immediate sphere of influence on social media. If you're just doing the things that you do for the attention or for the numbers, at some point it's not going to fulfill you. And I have experienced that firsthand, like I said, with the show. Man, something that has just been constantly just going around in my head is again, like, why are you doing it? Are you doing it because you want to be like the biggest podcast in the world? Are you doing it because you want to make money from it? Like, why are you doing it? And I think that there's not necessarily a wrong answer, but there are a lot of better answers than others. And I think one of the worst answers to that question is, oh, I just want to be the biggest show, or I want to have the most people listening to it, or I want to have the most eyes on me, because that's just going to get it's just going to get tiresome and you're going to lose interest in it. If someone wanted to play professional sports because they wanted to make a lot of money, and they get there and then they make all the money, they're not going to care that much anymore once they make the money, because you see people that make, more money than most people on earth will ever see. And it just gets normal to them at some point. They keep doing it because they love what they do. They love playing basketball or football or whatever it is. And I think that desire to create and to produce something of quality and value it has to be there in some kind of degree or form or fashion if you want to have a sustainable, I'll loosely use the word career, online, and that's something that I'm currently learning and have been learning ever since the beginning of this show. And I'm sure you've experienced that in one way or another as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think if I could summarize what you're talking about, it is a balance between chasing something and being content with where you're at.
Mm-hmm.
Because like you said, if you're chasing and then you get it, you're going to want to chase after something else.
Yeah.
And if you feel like you've constantly been in a place of, I need more,
mm-hmm.
it's a life that doesn't really equate to like a lot of peace.
Mm-hmm.
And that's the balance, right? Because ambition's not a bad thing at all.
Mm-hmm.
And in fact, if you pay attention, it's very inspirational when you find someone who actually just loves what they're doing, mm-hmm. and they're chasing after like a career. It's like, I'm working hard so I can do what I love for my career.
Mm-hmm.
And so, right, the question then for everyone to ask ourselves is, what's that balance of how do I find contentment with the fact that, for me, like, I battle with that too. It's like, okay, can I wake up and just be super grateful that I get a design for a job? Mm-hmm. There's so many people in the world that can't do that.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm very blessed in that way. But what are my ambitions? Like, what am I working towards? Because, right, growth and working and building on something is also very fulfilling. And so you want to have something where you feel motivated, like there's a longer term goal, but within that, you don't catch yourself feeling super unhappy with where you're at now.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that might be a big battle for, us in, let's say, our 20s and a little younger, is, okay, how do I find joy in the fact that this is my life? And then how can I produce from that? Not just producing to chase after this unattainable permanent joy that will come from whatever it is, whether it's a viral video or, attention or, yeah.
And no, I 100% agree. I think that's something that you have to find in some way. And it's especially in this field, like you were saying, you have to be able to find that, because, unless even for people that do blow up overnight or anything, like whatever kind of creative endeavor you're on, there's going to be ups and downs in that. And if you're solely anchored to the high of having that up, then you're not going to be able to make it when things aren't as great. I remember like what the one of the episodes I had on the show, it was, when it came out, like it was the best performing episode I had so far. And I was like, oh, this is great. Like, this is awesome. And then the next week, like the next episode was also good, but wasn't quite as good as the last one. And I was like, man, like, what's the point? What am I doing this for anymore? And I had to catch myself like, dude, you're getting to do this thing that you've been wanting to do for so long that people voluntarily take time to listen to you talk to people. Like that's the great, I don't know, that's just such a weird thing. And so, like you said, for you have the reality of, you get to wake up and do something every day that you love. You get to create, and you get to be, bound to the desires and the creative instincts that you have. But yet at the same time, you still have those goals and those ambitions that you want to chase after. And finding that balance can be hard and can be dicey, but I think it's something that's very important to continually strive to find. This is kind of a random question. Do you know who Rick Rubin is?
Yes.
So I recently he came up with a book recently. And if you're listening and you don't know who Rick Rubin is, I definitely recommend checking him out, because the best way I can he's a very big figurehead in the music industry, but he kind of looks like a wizard or something. He has like just crazy long hair. He's just a crazy looking guy. But I read his book recently, and it was really, really good and really interesting just to see his thoughts on the kind of creative process as a whole. And like I said, he's been working in the music industry for decades and decades and decades. And something he was talking about in the book was how, as an artist, like first considering yourself as an artist, whether you're making paintings or making music or you're just making a meal, whatever thing it is that you're doing, considering yourself as an artist. And then as an artist, how do you quantify or how do you measure success? And, typically we think of success as like, oh, well, I gotta, if I'm in the music industry, like I want to land a deal so I can, produce music and make a lot of money. Or if I'm, making films, like I want to win an award, or if I'm an actor, I want to get some kind of like an Oscar or something like that. Those are kind of the highlights that we think of. But oftentimes, if you tether yourself to purely, things like that, things like money or the views or whatever it is, it's going to be very difficult to sustain that. And so he kind of just made this challenge to whatever it is that you do, just constantly asking yourself, how do you quantify success? And it was a big wake up call for me because, again, I am not like, there are much bigger podcasts than me and what I do, but it took me some time to sit down and think, okay, like, why am I doing this and what do I hope to get out of it? Am I doing this because I want to be ultra uber famous? Well, no, and that's probably not going to happen. Like, that doesn't happen for most people. Do I want to be just like rolling in infinite amounts of money or something? No, that's not really what I'm doing this for. So figuring out, like, what does a successful attempt at this thing look like for you? And for me, like, I just enjoy, I've come to the conclusion that, yeah, I want people to listen to it and to see the show and to enjoy it. But at the end of the day, it's a little bit selfish for me. I just enjoy having good, fun conversation with interesting people. And if I get to do that, then it doesn't really matter to me as much if people listen to it or not, because I'm having a great time with it. I'm enjoying it. And at the end of the day, if someone else enjoys it, it's just all that much more better. And so I say all that to say, I wanted to ask you kind of, how long have you been working in this space, roughly, would you say?
I was doing freelance work and posting in college, but professionally outside of it, about 3 years.
So now that you're, 3+ years into this, what are your thoughts on just success in a creative field as a whole? What for you, like, do you ever wrestle with the idea of like, how can I, as a creative person, be successful, quote unquote? Like, because I by the sound of it to you, like, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but like, it sounds like what you've been saying is success to you is more than just, oh, I made a lot of money because I made a cool design and someone bought it, and that's what success means to me. Maybe it is. I don't want to put words in your mouth or anything, and you can correct me, but it seems like you have more thoughts on it than just that. And so I just want to just kind of pick your brain a little bit on what you think about this idea of attaining, quote unquote, success in creative fields like this.
Yeah. So from what you just said, one, I do want to preface and say, like, we are inherently somewhat selfish.
Yeah.
And to ignore that would also be silly.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like, of course, I like when my posts do well. Mm-hmm. And like, of course, I get excited when a lot of people buy my stuff and, people talk to me about it in person. Like, that feels good. And like, I wouldn't necessarily say that's bad either. I think I guess from what we've been saying since we started this is like, okay, what's the balance? Like, how much of this can I handle to where it doesn't affect me negatively, or, how can I be productive with this? Mm-hmm. And so with what you asked, my question would also be like, how much do you value success? Mm-hmm. / how much do you value successful people? And I think my opinion on that's shifted as I've done this for, the more I've done it, the less I care about being looked upon as successful. And you briefly mentioned it earlier, is any, celebrity could look at another celebrity with more money and more fame and these things. And so discontentment isn't exempt once you hit a certain threshold.
Yeah.
And so honestly, I think the flip switch for me, which helped me have a healthy relationship with this, is like, okay, I don't need to be the guy, right? We always want to be, I mentioned the motivational videos earlier. It's like those feed us and feed our egos, because it's like, okay, I'm going to be that guy eventually. And like people are going to look back and be like, wow, I wish I was nicer to him.
Yeah.
And all these like kind of, it all just feels like BS to me now, because, let's say you do get that validation, it'll fall flat. And I think this reminds me, I had a discussion with a designer at the North Face, and I was talking to him because we were kind of talking about how, technically the grass can always be greener. It's like you work at a big brand, but your name's not on it. Or, you can build your own personal brand, get recognized individually, but obviously the security and all sorts of things.
Yeah.
And I was really inspired by him because he was super like art focused. And I'll kind of go into like the philosophy behind like design and art. When they're obviously somewhat correlated, but art, when you look at complete swing of like an artist, they're like, I don't care about anyone's opinion. It's expression for me. And it's just like a muscle I need to use.
Yeah.
And, I remember in school, I'd think about that. I'm like, that doesn't make any sense to me. It's like, I want to post it. I want to get likes. I want to, whatever. I can't imagine making all this really cool stuff and then just not sharing it.
Yeah.
But there's people that are like that. And that fully swings on like, they don't care about success or prestige or any of that. Art is just something they genuinely need to do and enjoy. But then you have like design, right? So a lot of it can be for a brand, or, you want a good deal with this through my lens. It could be like, oh, through a really big like outdoor brand. And then you can post about it and do all these things. And, I think the question with success is like, if you fall too far into wanting to have that one post. And I remember thinking this, I'm like, I can't wait. One day I'm on Instagram being like, I finally did it, guys. I have a job at the North Face or Patagonia. And it's like, okay, but then that won't feel as good in a couple weeks. Maybe I'll boost my ego if I talk to someone on the street randomly and I'm like, yeah, I work here. And I think it's just a good perspective shift of, I'm actually very happy with where I'm at in my career. I would love a job at a big outdoor brand. But I think what it's taught me is you really have to look inside and say, do I actually just genuinely like doing this? Now, like I said, admittedly, I won't be the one that makes something cool and then doesn't share it.
Yeah.
I do want to share it. Because there's tangible things to it. It's like, I need to make money.
Yeah.
I can't just go on an island and do,
you want to be an artist, but not a starving artist if you can help it.
Yeah, exactly. If you can help it, for sure. So I think one thing that's very important is it's very refreshing when you find someone who doesn't value you based off your status and values you for who you are as a person. And so I think we need more of that philosophy around. And I think you actually might produce better art from it because you're pushing that person to be themselves and to exercise iteration, right? It's not like, oh, your stuff's sick, everything has to be sick, do that or we're gonna unfollow you. It's hey man, like you're actually, like, I can tell you really enjoy this. I would love to see more or talk to you about it. I think that's a better recipe. Even within that conversation, doing that to yourself, like not just being like, frick, I need a post now that does 400 likes and you just beat yourself up. Where if you can have this even this little bit of like a childlike just fun and play in you to create something, that'll go a long way, where you won't get caught up in all of this. I need to be successful. I need to make all this money. I need people to worship me. Like all of that immediately might seem fun and good, but I would say from my opinion, it's not.
Yeah, no, I would agree, because just like everything you're saying has been stuff that I've been thinking about, especially since I finished that book recently. But you know, doing the things that we do, whether it's a hobby or it's something we want to turn into a career, or maybe it is our career, or maybe it's just whatever, fill in the blank here. Um, I think that you the act of creating something, not just to use a very simple example, something I've been trying to do more of lately is whenever I cook food, what just literally just the most basic of human activities is cooking a meal and eating it, is not just making something because I know that it's something that's edible and that it will physically nourish my body with the nutrients that I need, and it will hopefully taste good. But if I have the time and the resources, trying to craft a meal that I'm proud of, that if I were to make this, maybe it wouldn't be 3 Michelin stars, but I would be happy to eat this myself and give this to someone else, and hopefully they would be happy with it and they would enjoy it as well, because it wasn't just, beans and rice on a plate. It was something that was crafted and there was some effort put into it. Are there going to be crowds of people that are going to come and pay $30 for this meal at like a restaurant? No, probably that's not going to happen. But I have found that when I take the time to do even something as small as that with, making a meal, my satisfaction with that is so much more higher than it is if I just literally heat up the things that I'm cooking. Like if you're making a steak, I don't know, like you could boil the steak in water if you wanted to, and it would be edible and you could eat it. Or you could take the time to season it properly, and you could find out what kind of temperature you want the inside of it to be, and you could make a side to go. Like, these are all very, whoever's listening to this, I hope I'm not making you too hungry, but but taking the time to craft something that you're proud of, and not just doing it just for the attention that it brings, or for this quote unquote success, that has allowed me to enjoy the process a lot more. Because for me, like, the thing that I do is this right here, and I will constantly ask myself, like, why am I doing this? Like, is this worth the investment and time? Is it worth the money that I put into it? Like, what is the point of this ultimately at the end of the day? And the thing that I have to be reminded of is that people do think, I mean, that's the whole point of a hobby. Like, yeah, I would love if this turned into some kind of career, or some kind of monetizationable, there's a $2 word for you. I hope that's a real word. Monetizationable opportunity. But at the end of the day, it's a hobby. And I do this the same reason why some people woodwork, and why some people knit, and why some people bake. You just do it because it's fun and you enjoy it. And that's what life is all about. And so, yeah, like we have that desire to be successful. We have that desire to, like you said, if it's someone like in your space, you want to work for that big brand. You want to be the chief design officer at like Patagonia or North Face. But at the end of the day, even if you were to get that position, even if you were to get that thing that you've been vying after for so long, at some point it's just going to become normal to you, and it's not going to have the same kind of shine and luster to it that it did when you didn't have it. And so I say all that to say, if you can do the thing that you do simply for the joy of creating the thing that you're creating, or simply just for the joy of the process of it, then you're going to likely be in a much more sustainable position than you would someone who is just trying to collect a paycheck. Because I can guarantee you, if there's another dimension in the world somewhere, and there's another AJ, and he's like, I just want to work at Patagonia and get the biggest check I can for being the coolest designer in the world. And let's say that version of yourself does that thing, for like a month or so, maybe it'd be the coolest thing ever. But at some point, the work starts to begin to be mundane, and it's just not as exciting as it was before. If you're just doing it for those numbers, and for in that case, the paycheck, it's gonna lose its shine at some point. And that's the thing that I think we ultimately are trying to avoid. At least I know I'm trying to avoid that. So but yeah, so I think that that's something that I have struggled with some, and I think I will continue to struggle with, but in a good way. Because like what you said, at some point, burnout, or I'll loosely say, like, burnout isn't always a bad thing sometimes, because I think it can test if you really want to do the things that you're doing or not. Not to say that, you should just go and work yourself to death and you should just, slave away 140-hour weeks or anything, but being tested in that way is not necessarily a bad thing. And I think that it can prove to you and to yourself whether or not you really want or need this thing in your life. So yeah, I like the way you put that. I like that a lot.
Yeah, and I think that philosophy is very important too, of like allowing and encouraging yourself to be tested. And so I don't also want to demonize the fact that getting like a big position is bad, or
Mhm.
like, you don't want to discourage people by saying like, oh, that's never going to be as cool as you think, because
No.
this is just one perspective.
Mhm.
I think, and I think we've been aligned on this, is the
Mhm.
fact that the motivation behind it is extremely important. And so if you go and do these things for something that feels like a shallow reason, that's going to eventually, surface.
Mhm.
And so, as far as, and this kind of is like I definitely have a holistic mentality on all of like what I do,
Mhm.
because obviously it's correlated. So if I'm having a bad day socially, it's going to affect my work.
Mhm.
Um, where mentally, I think our society has also become um, very much so of we can't be feeling certain emotions and diagnosing everything.
Mhm.
And so it's funny, I in Denver have a lot of uh, connections of people who live in different countries. And one time I was talking to, he's my pastor, but he was saying, America, we call it anxiety and depression.
Mhm.
In India, we call it life.
Hmm.
And I forgot what book I was reading, but it talked about the fact that when you're super resistant to an emotion, let's say, it's going to amplify it.
Mhm.
So you're saying, I can't be anxious. I can't be anxious right now. Um, versus saying, oh, I'm feeling a little anxious right now. It's going to go away.
Mhm.
Instead of being afraid of emotion, allowing it, and then having a learning like posture of like,
Mhm.
okay, what's happening that made me feel that way?
Mhm.
Or is it simply the fact that I don't know, and I just let it pass? In the same way with work, it's unfair to be like, oh my gosh, I can't be feeling burnt out. It's, oh, like I'm not feeling like this is a good balance for me. What's something I need to adjust for myself that will help me be more productive
Mhm.
or get what I actually want?
Mhm.
And so I think being introspective and having that, developing that emotional intelligence is going to help you creatively as well, because that's also in that realm
Mhm.
of, you can be more creative once aren't stressed and feeling, sad or angry all the
Yeah.
time.
Oh,
Uh,
100%.
yeah.
100%. I love it. I love it, dude. So I want to ask you something a little bit kind of different to what we've been talking about. But I've really enjoyed talking with you about this. But obviously it doesn't take a genius if you look through some of your work and the fact that you're currently wearing a hat with a rhino on it that seems to have a sunset as well, I think.
Yep.
You are a lover of the outdoors, it would seem. And
Mhm.
so I wanted to just ask you just one, where did this come from for you? You're currently living in Denver, which I'm a little bit jealous of, because I told you before, I think Colorado is such a beautiful place. I've only been there for a week and I fell in love with it the only time I've ever been there. So I'm
Mhm.
very jealous of that, but I want to ask you just, where did this desire to connect with the outdoors in the way that you do, where did this come from for you personally?
Yeah, it's actually really funny. The answer is simple, and that was, I just fell in love with Patagonia. Um, I remember in high school, I wasn't wearing it, but all like the rich preppy girls were wearing like the vests, and I was like, okay, what is that? And then I went to college, and I remember like vividly going on their website and looking at like um, their philosophy and what they stand for and all these things, and I'm like, wow, like that's sweet. And I just remember buying a lot of Patagonia stuff because I was so excited about and it just shows the power of branding, right? Like they stand for the outdoors in a way that makes it cool and exciting, that makes you want to do that. And so I don't have like this, you know, I was floating on a cloud in Colorado and then I had this revelation.
You didn't float on a cloud in Colorado? I thought that's what you did.
Still haven't yet. But yeah, so that's honestly how it started. And then when I started pursuing graphic design in college, I was like, okay, that's the goal. Like that's the big dream. And so I was making projects that were like Patagonia and North Face focused. And my junior year is when I actually started to do like illustration work. So I bought an iPad. And that's when everything clicked. I was like, the two things for me were like nature and outdoor stuff and then sports, but then doing it hand drawn. And so I started to, that's when like, it was like lightning. I was every day drawing like so much and iterating a ton and really developing my style. I can just think back right now, just imagine like how in love I was with it, which was really fun for me. And then, yeah, I think over time developing this philosophy of, nature is very important. And it correlates with the fact of we could so easily just be inside all day. And, you know, I would go on trips to Colorado and these other areas and just be in awe of like, this is sweet. Like, you know, and I think that was also motivation of, I want to inspire people to also be outside because I think it also inspires a lot of other things like, you know, feeling more at peace, like just looking out at this giant mountain and just being like, wow, I'm so small.
Yeah.
And maybe my problems are this small as well.
Yeah.
And you just kind of build this perspective. And so I think for me, it started with Patagonia and then I started to be like, wow, okay, what do I think about it though? And I developed, just a love for outdoor stuff. You know, can't really think of any other illustration styles like grungy rock star stuff or whatever. But and I bled into like sports and, you know, I had these minions that kind of did very well last year that were very off brand. But yeah, the core of it's always been like nature and, you know, creation.
Yeah. And you briefly mentioned how just being out in the world can be so inspiring. Like I grew up and still live in East Tennessee. I don't know if you can tell by my accent or not. I still can't decide if I have a strong Southern accent, but I'll let that be the debate of the audience, I suppose. But you know, I can walk outside and just see like just the most beautiful sunsets I've ever seen in my entire life. And just like these just rolling mountains and hills. And I'm like, man, this is like, there'll be days where sometimes it just takes my breath away. And you talked about just being inspired like that. I will never forget. It was when we went to Colorado. It was the summer of 2020. And I don't have to explain too much about what was going on that summer, but there was virtually nobody inside of, you know, relatively speaking, inside of the Rocky Mountain National Park. And first off, if you're listening, you have not been, I highly recommend going. But I will never forget the first day we went and checked it out. We drove in and we went on this big winding road, and we were at the top of this mountain, and it wasn't even one of the tallest mountains in the park. And I remember it was me and my brother-in-law and my dad. We parked on the side of this road. And we just said, we just looked up and pointed at the point of this mountain. We said, let's just go up there. So we just started climbing up there, and we got to the top, and I have pictures of my phone. I can see it right now. Like, I have never felt more just like amazed that these things exist. And moments like that, man, I wish I could just, I mean, you can take a photo obviously, and it's always cool to look back and be like, man, that was really cool to be there. But I wish I could just take those moments and like bottle them up and just keep them in my pocket, and it's just like lightning in a bottle, because I remember leaving that trip just feeling so filled in like a way I couldn't even explain, because it wasn't like like we didn't do anything crazy. We just like went to different national parks and checked them out and just did all the things you do when you go to those places. But I had never
Yeah.
felt that fulfilled after a trip before like I had. And it's something that I can't quantify. I don't know how to, I can't quantify it. I'm not going to sit here and act like I know the reason why it is that way, but man, it is it's an experience unlike anything when you find yourself, especially in nature, just enthralled by the surroundings around you. And so it's cool to see
Yeah.
that you've tried to bottle that up into the work that you do, because I think again, going back to what we've been talking about this whole time, I think that love of the world around us and what you're hoping to do is really reflexive of the work that you create. And I think that that will go a long way, much farther than any cheap attempt at just getting eyes or numbers or anything like that. I think that's going to go a long way, and it's really cool to see on my end of things, at least. So
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And I think you illustrated it very well. Of those experiences are very special to you.
Mhm,
And they're even better when you're around people you care about.
mhm,
Right. And that I think once you experience a view like that, or a trip that just you leave and you just can't stop thinking about it,
mhm,
like that's what feels fulfilling.
mhm.
And obviously it goes away, like you said, the memory just kind of, it's just different from actually being there in the present.
Mhm.
But there's just something really cool about the fact that there's a lot of really cool things out there. And I think for me, and what I've wanted to create is something that kind of, makes it, pokes at that memory a little bit.
Mhm.
It's like, wow, okay, I can relate to that. And so I think for me, I've always wanted to do encouraging slash, more happy
Mhm.
illustration work.
Mhm.
And yeah, I think certainly that was inspired by just like those moments that you were talking about.
Yeah.
And I think that that's kind of how I get my audience, hopefully too, is that kind of general
Mhm.
um, joy we've all gotten from our own experiences.
Yeah. Aside from just being outside in nature and just seeing cool things, are there any specific kind of avenues of art or any specific kinds of art that just inspire you, that like any kind of like painting or music or anything that whenever you're in around it in whatever way you consume it, that just inspires you to do what you do?
Yeah, I mean, I'm a big music guy.
Mhm.
And by that, I cannot sing or play an instrument, but I just love listening to it.
Me
Um,
neither. Me neither. So
so
I'm right there with you.
yeah, that I mean, I'm always on Spotify when I'm working and just trying to listen. I'm the type that though, like I'll find 5 good songs and just crank them out until they sound like dust to me, and then I'll just find new ones. But I love music. I think one thing that is always good for me is, since everything I do is pretty much digital,
Mhm,
is when I can kind of work with my hands and like actually paint something. Or
mhm.
I took a lot of art classes in college, and those were actually more fun for me. It's like sculpture and
Yeah.
a bunch of random things. So I think it's just refreshing to work with your hands when
Mhm.
you're drawing with Apple Pencil all the time. So I would say those. Um, yeah, I love music, love dancing and doing that kind of stuff. But I'm always inspired just by like any sort of creative endeavor people go through, like writing or you know whatever it is.
Mhm.
And so it's fun to always talk to people and hear their process, and generally what we've been talking
Yeah.
about is their perspective on that.
So speaking of music and just kind of going along with everybody talking about, have you been to a Red Rocks concert yet?
I went to camp
Oh,
a
dude.
few months ago, and it was really good.
Oh my gosh. I also I'm a big fan of camp, and I would when we were out there, we
Mhm.
went and we didn't see a concert, but we just went and saw the amphitheater. And I remember being there, I was
Uh-huh.
like, man, they would be so good here. Like it just being in that area, like it's unlike anything for obvious reasons. But
Yeah.
I know that they play there. I think they play there on a relatively frequent basis. I mean, they don't just like live there, but they played there before. And
Mhm.
man, I would love to go see them there. They're just they are. I mean, I know it's somewhat intentional, but like their style of music and everything they do is like the quintessential, like I'm gonna go outside and be inspired by nature music. Like that's just what it
Yeah.
is, you know. It's great though. I
Yeah.
love it.
Yeah. No, I definitely feel that. I get modes where it's like all I listen to is that type of music and
Yeah.
illustration, and then I'll listen to like Kendrick Lamar, so it always changes and depends on the mood. But
Yeah.
yeah, the concert was really good.
I would love to go out there someday. It's such a cool place, and they have such a distinct music style that just fits that area so well. So I'm very jealous. I want to go. I'm gonna go
Yeah.
out someday. I will go out there and I will go to a concert out there. But that's awesome, dude. Well, first off, we've been going for close to an hour now, so I want to just first say thank you for chatting with me about this. Part of the pleasure of me getting to do this, I always know, at least on my end, whenever I enjoy the interviews I do, is whenever I always keep track of time, is whenever I'm talking, I look down, I'm like, oh my gosh, we've been going for already like 45 minutes or so. Like that went by so fast.
Mhm.
And this has been a lot of fun, just a great conversation, getting to talk with you and just hearing about your process and everything that you do. But before we finish up, I have a kind of segment that I like to finish each interview off with. And I don't even know what spurred me to want to start this, but I've enjoyed doing it so far, and it's something I'm just going to keep doing. So at the end of
Great.
each interview that I do, I like to finish just on a bit of a different note with a little segment that I call 15 quick questions. So I'm going to ask you 15 quick questions. They're all going to be either this or that questions. So it'll be, either A or B, hot or cold, stuff like that. And I just want to get your immediate answer off the top of your head. Totally unrelated, mostly unrelated to everything we've been talking about, and just to get your thoughts on these things. So that sound good to you?
All right. I'm ready.
All right, let's do it. This is 15 quick questions with AJ Wiley. First question: beach vacation or mountain vacation? I think I might know the answer to this. Maybe not. I don't know.
I'm gonna say beach.
Okay, well,
I
I was thinking mountains at first, but I was like, he lives there, so maybe he would want to go
Yeah.
somewhere very different. So I respect that. I get it. All right. Are you a hot coffee or iced coffee person? Or you can substitute tea for this if you don't like coffee.
Iced coffee.
Iced coffee. That is where you and I depart. I'm a big.
All right.
I can't think of a day where I've gone without hot coffee. But iced coffee is great as well. Summer, fall, winter, or spring? Which one would you prefer?
Spring.
Sweet or savory food?
Savory.
In your opinion, are Crocs fashionable? Yes or no?
No.
That's a hot take. That is one I've found people have very strong opinions on. Pineapple on pizza? Yes or no?
Maybe.
Maybe. So
I don't think it's terrible. I wouldn't pick it first.
Okay, if I ordered a pizza and it showed up at your house or apartment or wherever you live, would you be upset at this very moment? Would you be upset if it had pineapple on it?
My answer would depend on how hungry I am.
I guess that's
so
fair.
Right now, I would say no.
Okay. Which do you prefer, sunrise or sunset?
Sunrise.
Guacamole or salsa?
Salsa.
That's a tough one. I'm assuming you like football, so I'm going to ask: do you prefer college football or the NFL?
NFL.
NFL. How did you feel about the recent Super Bowl that just happened? Who were you pulling for?
I was pulling for the Eagles.
Me too.
It was a little disappointing.
Yeah.
I won't give you a long answer, but yeah, I think could have been better.
Yeah. All right. Crunchy peanut butter or smooth peanut butter?
Smooth.
Do you prefer flats or drums?
Drums.
I agree. Who wins in a dance battle, The Rock or Kevin Hart?
Kevin Hart.
Which decade would you prefer to be in? 70s, 80s, or 90s?
80s.
All right. Coming up on our final two questions here. Which of these end of the year holidays are your favorite? Halloween, Thanksgiving, Christmas, or New Year's?
Christmas.
And final question. I ask everybody this. Sometimes I like to change up the question, but I always keep the last one the same. And I want to hear just a little bit of an elaboration on why you picked this answer. Would you rather fight 100 duck-sized horses or one horse-sized duck?
Duck-sized horses or
100 duck-sized
horse-sized
horses.
duck?
You've got 100 small horses the size of a duck, or one giant duck the size of a horse.
Hmm.
You can take a moment to consider this. This is a big question.
Yeah, this is tough. My immediate thought was like a bunch of horses like chewing at you. That would hurt.
There's
I
100
might
of them, too.
say, yeah, I might say horse-sized duck.
Why is that?
'Cause,
Why is that?
like, I don't know. The beak is probably the only like dangerous part of the body. You can get behind it.
Unless it like swiped you with its wing, you never know. I mean,
That's
I don't
true,
know.
but I don't know how strong the wings are. I guess if it's that big. I feel like I could tie it up and wrangle it a little bit.
You become friends
Bring
with
100
it, like tame it.
Yeah, yeah. I'd rather tame one giant duck than 100 small horses.
But then again, if you had like just a legion of tiny horses at your command, like that'd be pretty cool. Just like
That's a
they
good
could just
point.
go do whatever you need them to do. So
That'd be hard to
anyways.
manage, though.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Well, that is 15 quick questions. I appreciate you playing along there with that. It's always fun to end things on a little bit of a silly note. So I appreciate you answering that. Before we finish, I know that I came across you on LinkedIn. So I will put that link down in the description. So if you're listening, you want to check him out, then that link will be down there. But do you have any other links or anything that you would like people to be aware of that they can follow along or support what you got going on?
Yeah, I mean, I guess my Instagram and TikTok is AJ Wiley Design. So if you just search that, it should pop up. And then Kumawave brand is my Instagram for my apparel. So if you want to support in that way, that'd be great. But yeah, those are my accounts though.
All right, sweet. Well, I will make sure those links are in the description. So if you're listening and you want to check out what AJ's got going on, then definitely go down there, check it out. I think he does great work, and it's great. It's a lot better than anything I could make. So it's really cool. I really like it, and I think you're gonna like it too. So yeah, AJ, again, thank you for taking some time to chat with me. I had a lot of fun getting to talk with you and just getting to learn about your process and everything you got going on. So thank you for taking the time to chat with me today.
Yeah, it was fun. And I think another thing too is anyone who's listening as well, if they have input or want to talk about it too, it's a good discussion, and I think it's very important for us at our age and people now that are trying to make careers of it. So I think, yeah, I would end on the fact of encouraging people to just be curious and like have discussions instead of not. So
yeah, couldn't have said it better myself. I love it. Thank you again for being on the show. I appreciate it. To all of you that are listening, thank you for listening to and supporting the show. If you'd like to check out myself, AJ, on any social media, all those links will be in the description. So feel free to head on there, check them out. And yeah, thanks again, man. Thank you all for listening to the show, and we'll catch you all on another episode of the podcast. Goodbye, everybody.